These traps are getting just about ready to dip with water, but while I'm waiting here, I thought I'd show you what I used to clean the traps before. They've got to be very clean before you start the acid process. So I've got a pressure washer, and it's got a burner function that burns diesel fuel to deep clean them and clean the traps off really well. But if you've used something like Full Metal Jacket, which I've used on these traps, to get that off, you need a little something extra. And this is what I found works really well. This Purple Power is available at I know it's at Walmart. It's I think around $5 a gallon. Just mix it 1 to 1 with water, and in a bucket, just let your traps soak. Whether it's a day or two, what you'll find is that the Full Metal Jacket will turn in kind of slimy, and at that point, it can be easily removed with a pressure washer. And I think it's probably easy enough to remove even if you don't have one, just with a hose and maybe a little bit of brushing. So that's why I got off Full Metal Jacket. I don't know if I'll make a separate video about that process, but that works really well to do that. The other thing I wanted to show you was this. This is a trap that's already been done. You notice I taped the dog. The reason I do that is because these use the pit system where they've got a night latch, and I just want to keep that area clean. It's stainless steel, so it doesn't need to be coated anyway. So that's why I taped the dogs on the MB550s. And this is what the completed trap's going to look like. See, it's a little thicker than what maybe wax would be, but it's thin enough you can easily read the engraving. It makes a really nice finish, and I think it's going to work really well. Just got some plain water in this bucket, and I'm ready to rinse out these traps. Notice the light gray on the traps. That's where it's converted the rust. It's a little bit of surface rust, or what you see here. That's not going to hurt. The POR-15 is it's POR, which is paint over rust. So that little bit of rust, it doesn't bother. It's going to stick to these nicely, and they'll come out just as nice as that trap I just showed you. So I'll get these dipped in water, and we'll catch up with the process later. Okay, we're dipping some more traps today. Here you can see I've got some of my MB750s I'm dipping, and then also some of my MB550s. Got them all hung up on the rack. This rack, I've got some drags. These are just some drags for water trapping. They've got a few feet of a number 2 HD chain on them. I'm just trying to dip the chain, see how that works. Haven't dipped that much chain before, but I think it's going to work pretty well. And then just a few more MB550s over there. Just like the other traps, I'm dipping them in it's called Clean Strip Prep and Etch. You buy it for a gallon for $20 or so. It's right in that range, and then it's just diluted. Here you can see I put it in this bucket, and it's at 2 to 1. That's 2 gallons of water to 1 gallon of Clean Strip Prep and Etch. I think it could probably be diluted even more. So if it gets low, I would just add water to this bucket, and if it became less effective, I would just buy more acid at that point. But my plan now is just add water as needed. And as far as the traps, all I do is hang them up, then I come by one, and I dip them. Just drop them right in the acid, pull them out right away, let most of the acid drip off into the bucket, then I hang them up and just let them drip on the ground. Yeah, MB750s, they're closed jaws, so you can see I've got a stick stuck in there just to keep the jaws apart. The MB550s, all I've done on those is use painter's tape on the dog. The dog is stainless steel. The acid won't affect that at all. And you can see I hang them up a little bit differently. I hang them by the jaw. I like the way that worked last time. I didn't do it on the 750s. I hung them this way, so we'll see which way I like better, but I think this way works a little bit better. It'll gently drip off, and it won't bubble up right on the jaws right here. Any thick spots of the coating can lead to poor coverage, and it'll wear off a little easier. See, these traps are just dipped. They just come out of the dip maybe 5 minutes ago, and you can see they're starting to turn. You see this gray color? It's etching the metal, and it's eating away any of the surface rust. So this particular treatment is a good way to get rid of a lot of the extra rust. You see all these traps do have aftermarket pans on. So they'll dip and they'll hang for right around 30 minutes or so. Then all I'll do is dip them in a bucket of plain water, slosh them around a bit, and hang them back up. And once they're completely dry, then they're ready for the first dip into the POR-15 treatment. Yeah, this etch, it just really does a nice job cleaning up this rust. Even if I wasn't using the POR-15 treatment, anything I was doing, whether I was going to speed dip these, use the Rustoleum acetone dips, or just spray paint them, it's tough to beat this. Some people dip these in vinegar. I've done that before too, and that does okay, but it seems like it's harder on the springs than this process. And I don't know if that's because it's in there for a day or two. This process here is just tough to beat for getting it ready to paint. The etching of the metal helps the paint stick, and it cleans the rust right up. No need to dip in baking soda and water to neutralize it. Just regular water, hang them back up and let it dry. You can see the traps, they've sat for a half-hour drying on the rack, and you can see that the acid has started to etch the metal. It's eating the rust. So that's what we want. We want the metal etched in preparation for painting, and any light rust is converted. So the next step is to dip these in water, hang them up again, and let them dry. Okay, I've given the traps some time to dry right now. As you can see, they've sat for a while, and they've got a kind of a gray look to them. That's perfect. They're ready to dip right now, so I'm going to get the dip ready, and we'll start dipping traps. Here I'm getting ready to do another batch of traps. It's a little windy out, so I hope the audio comes through okay. These are the first dogless traps I've done. These are you've seen these before. This is the Bridger number 3s. Nice traps. They belong to a buddy of mine. So these are brand new. I'm waiting for them to dry. I've just done the acid etch and the rinse, and you can see they got that nice etched look, color to them. So I think these are going to turn out really well. Here we've got some brand new MB550s. These are mine. I don't know if these are the first ones I've done that have been brand new. So I don't know. It doesn't seem to be any different. The MB550s, when you get them, they're really clean. They're not oily like some other traps are. So they clean up really nicely. And these ones have been etched, and I think they're going to turn out great also. Now over here we've got some older MB550s that belong to a buddy of mine. You can see pretty badly rusted. These traps were waxed, and I don't know, I don't care for wax. As you probably figured out. Wax, and it comes off easily. It's not durable at all. So once you make a catch, you get into the calcium chloride again. I mean, it just eats them up. But I think we'll find that these are going to turn out pretty nicely. Once they come out of the POR-15, they're going to look pretty good. Some of these spots maybe could have been brushed. I don't know, but I think they're going to turn out okay. It's not really loose, so we'll see. But I think they're going to look pretty good. This is the bucket that I use for dipping. It's got a threaded top. And you can see I don't have very much in there now. I just have about a gallon of the mix ready to go. And I've put some duct tape over the rim of the bucket just to keep any, if I splatter on there, I want to be able to take it off and so I don't affect the seal. Here, I've just finished the first coat on these traps. See if the camera picks it up, but you can see it's a very thin coat. You can almost see the metal through there. But that's what we want. We want multiple thin coats. We don't want one thick coat that'll gunk up and be a pain. We want multiple thin coats, and we'll find that when we do the second coat, it'll look nice and black and even, and it still won't be gunked up. So these will take right around 2 hours, and then they'll be dry to the touch. At that point, we can dip them again, and then they can sit there. And if we'd find that they aren't quite thick enough, if it's still a little bit too thin, I can dip them a third time. I haven't had to do that. They look good after 2 coats, so I don't imagine I'll do that. One thing about the POR-15 I was going to point out is that I buy the gloss black POR-15, and there's a couple of reasons for that. The first reason is that's the cheapest. The other colors like flat black, gray, they're a little bit more money. And what we find is that when we thin the gloss black, you can see it looks flat. It gets a lot flatter, or at least semi-flat. Top of that, when they're in the ground, it doesn't matter what color they are anyway. And if I cared about the color, for example, if I was dipping body grips or some other kind of trap where I cared, before the POR-15 cures, I can spray paint these whatever color I like, and I'll get the benefits of the POR-15, and I can have any color I'd like. So that's why I use the gloss black. So we'll dip these again in another couple of hours. I've just finished putting the first coat on these traps. As you can see, it's a super thin coat, which is what you want. You want it to be caked on there, very thick. What I do is after I dip them, I wait maybe 5 or 10 minutes, and I take the air hose and I blow off the traps to get any excess drippage off. That might be hanging on the dog or the trigger in this case, the low parts of the trap. So once these are dry to the touch, which will be probably around 2 hours from the time they're done, they'll be ready for the second coat. And after that, they just hang and then they're all done. You'll notice I'm doing this outside where it's well ventilated. The smell's strong, but once it cures, the smell will go away, and there won't be any long-lasting odor. But the other reason to do it outside is that the POR-15 reacts to the humidity in the air, and it actually aids in the curing by being in the humidity. So it's a lot different than other paints. It's been about 2 hours now. See the POR-15 is dry to the touch, so we'll be ready for the final coat. They'll hang overnight and they'll be done. Here I'm just looking at some body grip traps. These are some Bridger 220s that I've done. They've only been in for 1 coat. I came out to do the second coat, and I guess I've made a decision to only do the 1 coat. They look really nice. I don't think they need the second coat. They're not likely to take the abuse of, for 1, calcium chloride, and for 2, having an animal that's alive, that's spinning around and working on them. There won't be as much of that. So I don't know if you can see here, but it's a little thinner, but it makes a nice coating. They're nice and free and easily moved. So there's some Duke 220s and also some Duke 160s. So I guess that's what I wanted to show you. I'm just going to leave these at 1 coat and call that good. I think that's going to make a nice finish. Here you can see the finished product. These are our Death-Klutch traps after POR-15 treatment. They've been dipped twice, and they've been sitting out here for a couple of days. They're dry to the touch. They can be taken down. Depends on the conditions, I guess, but they'll be fully cured after a few days, I suppose. So I've got no problem letting them sit here for a few days and make sure that the treatment's fully cured and it's ready to set and use. They'll be a little stiff right away. I'll have to kind of break the pieces loose with the dog in the jaws and wind it, but it comes loose pretty easily. And once it does, it's all pliable. It makes a nice finish. It's not too thick. It's really just right. You can see it's been a few days, and the traps are completely dry, and they're mostly cured right now. You can tell that there's not much scent to them. Things will be a little stiff. You'll notice the chain will be a little stiff, but that'll break right up, and it'll get pretty loose and workable. Same with the swivels, maybe the pan. As I mentioned, it's got the finish is kind of semi-gloss or flat. It's not nearly as glossy as the original product due to the thinning. I did dip these a third time, which I haven't done, and that's because I thinned the mixture a little bit more than 1-to-1. So it's not an exact science. When you do it, probably keep it not quite as thin and do a test dip, and if it's a little bit too thin or too thick, just adjust accordingly. So these I would probably add it a little bit, and I'll add some to my dipping bucket. But you can tell these from my earlier batches are a little bit flatter looking, but the coverage looks good. I think they look really good. These I've worked loose, and you can see the swivels in the panel moves again. So yeah, I'm really happy with the way they look. I think they look great, and they're going to work great. The only thing I would change is I would rather not have had to dip them 3 times. But yeah, the end product looks pretty good. I've got a lot more traps to dip, and I'll keep using this product and keep refining it. But it looks like dipping in 1-to-1 is the recipe. Dip them, let them sit for a couple hours till they're dry to the touch. Dip them one more time. Then you just let them sit for a few days, and you can smell them. If I smell the traps right now, I can hardly detect the POR-15 and that solvent smell. The traps that I'd done before, you can't smell at all. They don't smell like chemical or paint or anything. They just smell like nothing to me. So can the animals smell them? I guess I don't know. Probably, maybe, but I don't think it matters. It doesn't matter to me, and I'm pretty happy. Here I'm going to try to do a test with calcium chloride, peat moss, and regular dirt just on the trap treated with POR-15. This side I just dug a hole here, put the trap in and lay the calcium chloride in there, and we'll bury it and we'll check on it and see what happens. Put an extra heavy dose in there and we'll see if it shows any ill effects. Here you can see I put some calcium chloride and just a little bit of sifted dirt in the bottom. Put maybe 3 times as much calcium chloride as I'd normally use. Put the trap in and put a little bit on top too, and then we'll give it a couple weeks and we'll see what it looks like when it comes out. Well, there's the finished set right here. See, I've marked with a couple flags so I can find it again. Tried to simulate everything with the amount of peat moss I might use. The only thing is I've used extra calcium chloride in the mix. I'm not going to dump any water on it, I don't think. We'll see if it rains naturally. But if we don't get much rain in the next few weeks, we'll have to do something different. But this is a finished set. We'll see what happens. I'll press down tightly and packed in there and sift it in on top. Well, if you guys remember, I don't know if it was 4 or 5 weeks ago, something like that, I buried an MB550 treated with that POR-15 treatment I've been working on, and I buried it with calcium chloride, and it's I haven't touched it. It's been sitting here. Calcium chloride, I've seen the spot where it'll, anyone that's used calcium chloride, it'll get wet and draw in the moisture, and it sat there, and I haven't taken a look to see what it looks like. So I'll dig it up now, and we'll take a look and see how it held up. It's not set, I guess. It's just in the peat moss. And that is amazing. Look at how well that held up. Calcium chloride, again, if you remember, it had to be about twice the normal amount of calcium chloride that I'd normally would use. And this thing looks like it just got out of the treatment. It's absolutely perfect. Just doing a remake here, and you can see this is MB550, just caught a coyote after the POR-15. A little rubbed on the springs, but yeah, that's a catch circle there. But all in all, in pretty good shape. The coating, chain's a little beat up, tag's gone, I see, but that's what it looks like. I started the POR-15 trap dip project 2 years ago this summer. It's July 18th of 2019 as I'm filming this, and I picked out the 6 probably most aged traps that I could find. These haven't been touched since the initial dip in 2017 that you see in the video, and you can see like this one here's obviously had a catch. The chains show some wear. There's a little bit, around all the corners. This could be dipped again. More chain. The chains it's tough to keep anything on these chains, I guess, but I was hoping this would hold up better than paint, but it seems like for the price of this, you'd probably better off using a Rustoleum in the acetone, just because it's half the price. Here you can see, these have obviously had catches in them, and they're a little bit beat up. The one thing that stands out is on these pans. I should have etched these a little bit more. You can see that the paint wants to peel on the pans on a lot of them. The pressure washer was taking a lot of that off as I was getting these ready. So that's one thing I would have done differently, is maybe soak the pans in acid longer just to get a better etch on them, or else etch the pans separately before installation to just get them a little bit rougher so that the paint would stick better. So that's my fault. I don't think that's anything with the product. The chains, I think, are the chains. I think that's just what you get. This tag looks new. This tag's likely been replaced after a catch. So all in all, it's not bad. I think they look really good. They could have a wire brush taken to them, and they could be re-dipped into the paint, and now they look like new again, I'm sure. So I think they look pretty good. You can see for yourself, this is 2 years without being touched, but again, it's not as good as powder coating, and like I said, for the money, I think we're probably better off using the Rustoleum and the acetone, but these are the worst of the worst. The rest of them, some of them still look like brand new, and a lot of ones, even with catches, they can look a little bit better than this. A fox won't beat them up as bad as a coyote will. But I just wanted to show what they look like 2 years later.